And we're back. Welcome to the latest podcast from the Casual Gamers Project. My name is Diggs and I'm joined by the usual crew of Peter and Stevo. It's been a while since our last episode. In that episode, we covered in depth our thoughts on the Resident Evil 4 remake. If you haven't already checked that out, please do so. So, today's episode, we're going to take you back to an age before the internet was the go-to source for gaming news, previews, cheats, and reviews. Magazines like Games Master and Electronic Game Monthly were our Bibles. We'll be exploring the impact these games had on us, how they influenced our gaming experience, and of course those classic strategy guides that saved us from countless in-game frustration. There was many.
Oh my god.
That's right, I'm laughing there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I could have saved myself so much time.
Yeah, oh my god. And you think about it, like, it's all before the internet, so you can get cheats. You can get cheats just the click of a mouse.
Yeah.
All strategy guides, everything. It's amazing. But back then,
we literally had to take an hour out of our day just to go to wherever we needed to go, just to find what we needed to find, just so we could go home again to try it.
It could be, and you know what? Most of your information came on the schoolyard playground.
Yeah.
Talking to your mates
That's
at school. How do we get past this bit?
Although in saying that, you get some of the lads would be honest, but you'd always have to be careful of a few others because they'd always send you down the wrong path. They'd always give you something wrong. You know?
Many tried, many died.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And you remember, like, if you did get past like a part in a game that was difficult for everyone, and you figured it out. You were like a little god there in the playground, like, oh yeah.
Swarm of bees, boy. Do like round honey, straight round you, so they are. Tell me, how do I do it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you if you give me a link to that game that you got last week. You know that?
Yeah, exactly. It was never straightforward.
Oh.
Yeah.
God no.
No, but in terms of gaming magazines, guys, like, I have to admit, like, the one that sticks out in my mind since, I don't know, maybe the age of 10 or 11, can't remember really, but it was always Games Master magazine. And
definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, definitely.
I think that was with everybody.
Yeah. And it was associated with the TV show, but
I think that's what more or less got everybody, because
we all watched that.
I didn't know much about the magazine, but the game show then and the magazine was just like, oh yeah, defo.
In tandem with one another, yeah. And I think for me, the reason why I kind of gravitated towards Games Master was because I was so infatuated with Mortal Kombat 1 when it was released. Playing it on the Mega Drive.
Oh, we all know that too well.
Yeah. But I'll never forget, right?
And for good reason.
Then, but there was no internet back then, so you never heard about, there's going to be a sequel.
No mobiles, no internet, nothing.
Yeah, so you knew there was always going to be sequels and stuff like that. But I don't know about you, but every so often I would just find, like, I go into a newsagents and suddenly there's the latest issue, and it's like, oh my god. And I remember one day going in to, it wasn't Eason's, it was like Carol's Newsagents was the name of the shop. And I went in and I just happened to see, like, the latest Games Master magazine, and I had like an exclusive reveal of Mortal Kombat 2, and it had everything in it. And I was like, oh my god.
Blown away.
And the difference in visuals from the first game, I was like, oh my god. I think I read that magazine back to front at least 100 times. And just, having it in your hands and being so excited about the prospect of playing that game. But I think that kind of the start of the love affair with Games Master magazine and even the TV show for me. What about you? Like, can you remember what was the first one? First magazine, or
do you want to go first, Sweets?
Shall I?
Or do you want me? I'll give you the option here, man.
That's what I'm kind of afraid of, because if I go first, here, you know what I'm like.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go on. I'll go first. I'm trying to think back. I think I was saying this earlier to you, Dig. Like, it was. I think because we had the Master System. So we did at the time. Now this, because that was the first console we ever had.
Great console.
Yeah, some epic games on it. And I do remember looking for, wanting to find cheats for games we were playing, because like we were all mad, like in Sonic the Hedgehog. Oh, yeah, of course. Games were seriously tough.
Oh, do you remember? Guys, figure it out.
Do you remember Space Harrier? Do you remember how bloody hard that game was?
Oh my god, yeah.
Don't even get me started on that. That's a whole story on its own.
I didn't find out. I got I never finished it.
And I didn't find out till years later that there was actually cheats for it. It took me nearly 7 or 8 years to figure that out. But anyway, going back to what your question is, the very first magazine, from what I do remember. Now I do remember some of those other magazines that you touched upon, because when we used to go into the game stores, like I remember even sometimes we always go, like myself and yourself, Steve, but we would always go into town on a Thursday with our folks to do the shopping. And we'd have all the boys with us, like all our brothers and that. And like obviously because me and Steve had to mind them. And we would be looking at, like, we'd always go into like the game. We'd be always like, Mum and Dad, right, we're going to go and look at the games or whatever. But we'd always kind of, every so often, kind of look, there'd be magazine things, like there'd be kind of like newsstands and stuff like that, and be a few things. And you'd always be reading through the articles. But some of the earliest ones that I remember was some of the Sega magazines. And I think it was more to do with the fact is that we owned the Master System. But the first magazine I think I ever bought was... it was a Sonic the Hedgehog magazine. It was called Sonic the Comic. Now, I know there was a multitude of other Sega magazines at the time. And what this one was, it was a combination of different things. There was comic book elements to it, because what it used to do is it would go into like individual stories based on the Sonic universe, but all in comic book format. Like it would have all of the, like the still images and like the comic book strips and all. Like, it was really cool. And I remember that was in 1992, 1993, I think it was. I was only 10, 11 at the time. And I remember saving up some of my pocket money, or if I was, say, sick off school, my parents would feel sorry for me. If they take me in this town to do shopping while all the rest of the boys are at school, they feel sorry for me. Like, Mom, can I get a comic? And so they'd buy me one and make it feel sorry for me. So they'd ask, right, what one you want? But obviously it had to be within a budget. And so I'd see that one there and I'd go and I'd buy it. You must
spend the golden child, because we never got that.
I knew how to pull a few strings from time to time. But anywho, the magazine didn't just have comic book strips or stories, which it did do, and I thought they were pretty cool. But it also had different sections with previews for different games. Like, say, they'd done a lot of Mega Drive stuff, but there was stuff on the likes of the Game Gear on the Master System. But I do remember they used to have different sections with previews of games that were upcoming, because I do remember an article on one of the pages that had a preview of the Flash game that had just come out on the Master System in and around that time. And they were talking about what they liked and what they thought would be good about it and stuff. And they said they really liked the graphics and the visuals. And I do remember them giving it a rating or something at the time. But then there was also cheats. There was small I think it was a 1-page cheat section on it. And then I didn't always buy the magazine again, just when you could afford it. But I do remember sometimes going in and just reading the comic books when I could get my hands on
that's
it.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Getting the quick 5-minute read.
Oh, that's it. Just to get the hand on the cheats or any nosies on, say, upcoming games or anything like that, just to see what was coming out like.
Just like you said, that's right, sorry. And many shops that we kicked out of because of that.
Oh, yeah, a lot.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
But sure, what harm were we doing, really? It was harmless.
You don't mind.
Yeah. But yeah, that was one of the first ones that I had. Like, obviously there were so many others, which I know we'll touch on later on. But for me, that was the first one that I used to get. Because again, it had a mixture of comic books, which I like to read. And obviously it all Sega stuff, which I loved back then, the Master System, a lot of stuff covering the Mega Drive. I do remember there were sections of it, actually fun, just when I think about it, just before I change subject. They used to have sections, and not just of Sonic the Hedgehog, they used to have portions of it telling different stories of Streets of Rage. They used to have a comic book strip of Streets of Rage, like going through the background story of Axel Stone, Blaze and Adam and stuff like that, leading up to the events of the game. And I thought that was really, really cool, and I loved the actual artwork style of it, very of its time,
Yeah.
That for me was really, really cool. But again, then obviously you have the extra bits with you get a few cheats, and it wouldn't be as extreme with some of the cheats that you get in other magazines, but they'd have a few subtle ones here and there. Like I do remember them later on having a few cheat sections for the likes of some of the Sonic games, like some of the level selects and stuff like that. You know,
like the starter.
Yeah,
it wasn't the main course.
Yeah, exactly. But that was my first foray into like buying like games magazines and really getting into like reading them and stuff like that.
Yeah. What about Steve-O? What about you? You remember the first ones?
Well, it sounds like there's two that probably, well, I could say three that kind of say stuck out at me, but I'll start off with the one at the beginning, and it was Premier Manager 98.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can't remember which magazine that it was in, but I remember buying the magazine, and we were actually away on holidays in Mayo at the time, and everybody was in the shop doing the shop, and I went in to Newsdays and bought the magazine. I sat in the car for about an hour, and all I did was read Premier Manager. I read it from start to finish, and when I let go of that book, I wanted to know everything about it. I think it was the first management game on a console, so I was like, yeah, I'm definitely buying this, and I wasn't disappointed either. Next, I would probably go with it had to be to Nintendo when first we bought my N64, and it had to be Zelda Ocarina of Time. And I was doing my homework on that too. Obviously, watching Games Master and looking through all the magazines, you're going, I know Zelda was big, but how good is this game going to be? And in order for me to see how good it was going to be was to read the magazines, and everything it said was basically, it was 10 out of 10, it was given 10 out of 10, and I went, right, I'm buying it. And you know what? It was it was absolutely phenomenal game. Even to this day, it's still a classic. You can pick it up and play it now and you wouldn't be disappointed.
I know I didn't play it as much as you did, but I sat and watched you playing it, and you could just even to sit and watch it, you could tell how good of a game it was.
You picked it up now and played it, it wouldn't feel out of place. So that kind of The next one I would go with would be, say, when I got the Dreamcast, and it was Code Veronica, and reading up magazines on Code Veronica, because I knew it was a spin-off of Resident Evil. You know how much that we all love Resident Evil, and found out that this game's only being released on.
Did you buy the Code Veronica strategy guide as well?
Well, I was going to say that later on, but yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did indeed. But even before I even get to the strategy guide, just reading up on about it, or say about Code Veronica on the Dreamcast, because it was a spin-off Resident Evil and it was only being released on the Dreamcast. So I said, and I've got the Dreamcast. I'm going, boys, I got something you ain't got. Do that, do that. And I was doing my homework on it, but obviously I was going to buy it. It could have been a flop, but obviously thank God it wasn't. It was a fantastic game. But even if it was a flop, I was still going to buy it, because obviously why, it was Resident Evil. But I have to say, I was not disappointed. The same, reading all the magazines about it, just to see, yourself, you always have doubts it's going to be good. You always want a kind of reinsurance. So that's why we always look at the magazines. You're going to look at rating to see, is it worth buying? Am I going to enjoy it? And same as like Premier Manager and Zelda, I was not disappointed in all three accounts. Fantastic games.
Yeah. So you say you were probably like really driven towards what game was in the magazine. Like.
Yeah, if I had the games I was looking for specifically, and I would go like back then and go and any magazine I was going to, do reviews on it, I would, bend over backwards to try and get that magazine that could tell me exactly what was in the game. Is it worth buying? Basically every detail about it. Will it be good? Will I get a bit playability out of it? Things like that.
Yeah, I'd admit, like, I was driven that way too in the beginning, like, because I think when you're a kid and you've got only so much pocket money.
Yeah, that's it. Now you said it, because you're afraid of wasting the money. You said, I'm not going to do this, and then there's a game you're not even going to use then or play.
Yeah, but then you'd always try and calculate if you had some left over to get sweets and things like that,
Yeah. But see that you said that. See, Premier Manager, because I'm mad at the football, it didn't cost me a thought, because it was the first managerial on the game on the console, and Resident Evil, and I knew myself, because we were mad into Resident Evil, the only one that had doubts was Zelda, because I was buying the N64 and you're saying like reading the magazines, and
it was your first Zelda game, right?
Yeah, it was my first Zelda game, so that's the one I had doubts with. And even reading all the magazines and everything, I still had doubts in the back of my mind.
Well, I suppose because it was very different from what we were used to playing growing up as well. So I suppose, yeah.
But plus at the end of the day, you take a chance. And and it paid off.
Yeah.
That was the first Zelda game, right, in 3D.
Yeah.
The rest of them were all that kind of like...
It was a Game Boy and SNES and that,
Yeah. No, isn't it? It's interesting when you think back to, when you say like, oh, I had to have something in the magazine that made you want to buy it and things.
Yeah, that's the way I used to look at the magazines, because if it didn't entice me reading the magazines, I just went, no, it's not for me. I'm not going to waste my money. Because you said money was scarce back then. We went walking. We were only kids.
Yeah, you couldn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You didn't want to.
We couldn't afford to buy them.
That's it. Yeah, no. Just when you're sort of thinking there, like with Zelda and stuff, like I remember one of our other brothers had a couple of Zelda games on his Game Boy. Now I know, like later on, just quickly, like I do remember a game we had on the Master System. It was called Golden Axe Warrior, and it was a direct carbon copy of the early Zelda games. But that game was phenomenal. Even though we got it later on, I think I got it around the time like I bought like Actua Soccer 2 on the PlayStation. But it was the one game, considering it was a very old game, that took me back to play the Master System again, away from the PlayStation, because it was so bloody addictive. That game was absolutely brilliant. So it was. But yeah, just when you mention the Zelda, it puts me in mind of that game, because it plays almost identical to the old Zelda games.
I'm trying to remember that.
It's brilliant.
I did play it.
Oh, you did play it. You did play it, yeah.
Yeah, that's one I'm going to have to look up and maybe YouTube it. But isn't it? Going back on what I just mentioned there about what entices you to buy that magazine. Do you remember? Like I would have had this bad habit, like of being, when you're addicted to like a franchise like Mortal Kombat, it's your favorite game or something like that. But then Resident Evil came along, and we all got massively hooked on that game. But I remember like going in and scanning the shelf for all the video game magazines and seeing what's in and what's the content. Because let's face it, the front cover is what.
Oh, that's what gets you. Yeah.
It's you're looking at the little, the images, first of all, the graphics on it, like the art on those front covers were always amazing. I found.
Yeah. That was always that was the thing that always drew you in with them. I found.
And then you'd have all the little articles kind of like around whatever the main picture was.
I actually do remember, like just when we were thinking about that, like with going to look at magazines, I do remember around that time when you were like mad into Mortal Kombat, you from time to time were getting able to get pocket money, and you went out and you were able to get magazines, because I remember you would take the magazine over to show us the stuff that was on it, and we'd all be sitting looking at it.
Well, you mean to say, did you take it over, but nobody else could get to see it because you had it?
Oh no, we all got to look at it.
After when you were finished, which took about 3 or 4 hours.
It was like a queue at the butcher's, wasn't it?
That's exactly it. We were just standing there and looking at our watches.
Yeah, I remember getting like I don't know what it was. It was maybe a PlayStation magazine or something, and reading through it. And Peter
over your shoulder.
He's sitting over. He's almost like a victim of crack, a crackhead. He's just like pacing back and forth. Are you done with that magazine yet? You done?
Oh, you know what I was like? I was to me, video games back then, up until the last couple of years, video games was an addiction for me. A drug.
Yeah. I'll agree with that there. Now it kind of slowed down a little bit more. It's not so much. It's more hobby and pastime. But what I was going to say earlier was when them little articles, you'd be like, Resident Evil 1 came out, we played it to death, and we were anticipating Resident Evil 2, and it would have like the tiniest little article about Resident Evil 2, and you'd fall for it, and you'd buy the magazine, and you'd rush home, you'd open it up, and it might be a 6-line paragraph about Resident Evil 2, and you're like, oh my god.
Do you know what, just before you actually the last conversation you just had there with Smith looking over his shoulder, I was actually thinking about that. You get the magazine and you go home saying, oh yes, about Resident Evil, it's about Premier Man, it's about this, and you go home and it's like a tiny little paragraph.
Yeah.
I'm going, oh no, I'm after wasting £5 or £4, whatever it is in the magazine, just for that, and it tells you nothing.
I do remember you getting a magazine with Mortal Kombat 2.
Yeah.
And I remember because you were looking desperately to try and find, even I think with Mortal Kombat 1 as well, because you were desperately trying to understand all of the finishers and the fatalities. Yeah,
Yes.
I do remember you getting a couple of magazines around that because you were trying to literally do every fatality with every character.
Well, fair play for remembering them all, because I couldn't remember one.
I didn't forget it, and you know the thing about
The only one I could do was Scorpions one. Block up, that was it.
Oh, that was an MK1, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair play.
So
I couldn't do the rest.
It's mad that you still remember them. Like I remember Sub-Zero's forward down, forward A, and ripped the head off.
Yeah. I could never do the rest of them.
I think Johnny Cage's was like forward 3 times and one of the buttons, or forward 4 times. You know.
I do remember you, because you memorised them like down to T.
Wasn't it? Yeah. No, there was some of them like, but I always remember like when I was anticipating Mortal Kombat 2, you know, we knew it was coming out, or we always knew there was going to be a sequel. What I meant to say. But I remember getting my hands on the magazine, and it had a real extensive preview of Mortal Kombat 2, and it literally broke down every single character. So what? Mortal Kombat 2 nearly had double the amount of fighters.
Yeah.
And then the big news was that everyone had 2 fatalities. Then there was the friendship. There was the
stage fatalities as well.
And the stage fatalities. And that was the fascinating thing for me, because Mortal Kombat 2, you know, when you think of the first game, it was set on Earth and all that, and then the second one set on Outworld, and I was blown away how that game looked that time. And I mean, I just couldn't stop. I must have looked at the magazine like 100 times, just in anticipation of being able to play that game.
Yeah. I was just thinking there, just when we're talking about that, like even though at the time we were all at school, or like either primary school or secondary school, but really our education that we were actually learning was coming from games magazines. We weren't learning anything in school. The magazines was our education.
Yeah. That's true. I remember there was some, you know, if I didn't understand the word that was used in the magazine, I'd be asking parents, be like, what's that mean? You know, you were getting a bit of an education there, like, reading through them.
Yeah.
But,
studying.
Yeah.
I say that to my son, Dylan, I'm going, son, you don't realise this, back in the days, that's all we had. We'd no mobile phones, we'd no internet. We had to walk to the shops or get the bus, whatever it was. Well, we couldn't even afford the bus. we used to walk to the shops, and we'd be looking through game magazines to see what games were coming out and see what games we were actually looking to buy if we could get them. It was just all fun for our eyes too, you know what I mean? Because we had computers and we were looking for more games to play. But we didn't have the internet to just touch a button, there it is. We didn't have that.
Yeah.
So 3 heads.
Just when I'm thinking of it there, back in the earlier days, like when we were reading the magazines, because I do remember we weren't collecting games magazines, but I do remember, like me and you, Steve-o, we were collecting those kind of, like, you know, them collectible magazines. I was collecting a dinosaurs collection. One you could give you like wee models and you could build the dinosaur.
Like the first edition would be like cheap in the shop.
Yeah, I actually, there was 104 episodes ever released.
I get it for £1, and then after that, then it could cost you £3.
There was 104 episodes released for that, and I have still the whole 104 episodes. And Stephen had one. It was called the Ancestral Trail. It was like a gothic kind of like fantasy kind of thing. It was really cool. It had like card kind of games that you'd build up every week, and you could build like a whole like story and lore around it. And there was like 50 something episodes, and Steve, well, you got all of that. But around that time, when we were buying those magazines, we were also looking at a lot of the video game stuff when we go into the shops to buy them.
Oh, that was it,
yeah, as well. So you get you get your wee sneaky look at the game stuff as well before you go and buy your magazine that you wanted to actually buy.
You think about it, on average, the game magazines, we always went to the newspaper and the games magazine, and you had a few. Like what? You'd fish a PlayStation magazine.
Oh, you'd loads.
There was loads, but on average, what were you talking about? £4?
Oh, no, it wasn't.
What would it be?
I'm trying to remember. Well,
so £3, £4?
At that time,
Irish punt.
It was Irish pound, Irish punt, and I'm nearly sure there were about 3 in and around.
£3.
£3, yeah.
So you're talking in this day and age now, to probably about what? It's going to be about £6 now if we're still on the go now.
Well, I remember the official PlayStation magazine when you got the demos, they were expensive. They were more expensive, should I say?
Yeah,
They were a bit between. Actually, they were under a tenner. They were about between. I remember when I bought my first one back in June in '97, and it was like it was $7. Was it just under? Was it $6.85? And then it gradually creeped up to $7.50. Yeah.
Yeah,
and eventually went up to about $8.
The demo disc alone.
Yeah, exactly. So they knew with the demo they'd charge more.
Yeah.
I just didn't think they were that much.
Because I remember a lot of times me and you and the boys, we would bunch together every single month.
Oh, we did, yeah. Especially we found that, say, if we bought one magazine, it always give you like a little preview of what's coming out the next month in the next magazine. So if it was them you wanted the next magazine, say, oh boys, look, there's a game that we're looking for, there's a demo of it. We'd all chip in and we'd all chip in that magazine. Then the following month with that demo.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it's interesting you say that, Steve-O, because that was always like the hook, wasn't it? They give you a preview, sneak preview at the end of it.
The back page or the second last page or something like that to give you a preview.
For me, that's kind of akin to. Do you remember years ago, like when we were kids, we used to rent videotapes from the video store.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, you'd have maybe 5 trailers for other movies, and that's how you discovered what your next movie was to watch.
Exactly. Yeah.
I do remember, Dig, even you'll agree with this. The Games Master magazine was probably before, the likes of the PlayStation, was probably the go-to magazine for most of us. Yeah. That was kind of the one that we were drawn to, because we used to always watch it on the TV show as well. It used to be on in the at the end of the week, like a Thursday evening or whatever it was on, a Wednesday or Thursday evening.
Yeah, Dominic Diamond was the host,
and that kind of enticed you a lot more to go out and buy the latest magazine when it would come out when you did have money, But the thing was with But it was because it was well laid out, but it also had some of the best information that you could find regarding news for games as well.
I used to love the sets. Do you remember, was it one of the earlier seasons they were in in a church? They filmed in a church.
Yeah,
I think so.
In a church.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they would change it then. Every season they'd have a new location, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah, venue.
It was really good, like Games Master. I mean, I was addicted to that. It was only 30 minutes long. And do you remember, they had the golden joystick, right? 2 people
the golden joystick, and then the winner gets the golden joystick, yeah.
Always these good-looking girls that come out and present the winner with the golden joystick.
Yeah.
I wasn't looking at the golden joystick, I was going,
But,
we were young and impressionable, what can we say? Yeah.
I always remember, there was a segment on it, because the Games Master himself, that was Patrick Moore. And do you remember, it was he'd be on the screen and it'd be like computer graphics. It was like a robot, wasn't it? He was like a half man, half machine type thing, but it was just his head. But there was always a segment on it where the kids would ask the Games Master for help.
Yeah.
On a video game, and
I do remember that.
The cheat or the strategy how to get past a bit, and you'd be like, "Oh yeah, I got that game. I'm going to try that." But the show was amazing. I loved it.
Yeah, it kind of it was a good it was a good all round show because it provided something to fill all of the gaps, something for everybody. You know, even and it took a lot of the references from the magazine itself, because you had previous sections, you had your gameplay and you said the cheats as well, where they would help you out. So it kind of related to what was going on in the magazine as well, I think, which was really cool.
Yeah, it worked perfectly alongside it. Yeah. But
that was one of the best shows. There was a couple of game shows on at the time. I do remember one that used to be on ITV. It was called Bad Influence. That was a good one. Used to do a lot of previous stuff. But they didn't do what Games Master did, because Games Master actually did and ran competitions. You know, well, obviously the other one would run competitions that you could win consoles, but you didn't actually have people really as much showing up and just, playing games to win, say a trophy and stuff like that.
So what would the Bad Influence game show be then? It was just reviewing games and that's it?
We were doing reviews of games and upcoming stuff, and just kind of a background of newer things.
What was the girl's name? There was a blonde girl, right? She had that kind of spiky haircut, right?
Yeah.
Was it Violet something?
It was a Violet, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Violet, and she hosted it, right? She was on her own. Was there even an audience? Can you remember?
There was. They'd actually bring other kids in, and the kids would be in testing out other computers and games, because they go over to them and they'd see what games they were playing, and they'd get their input on what they liked and what they didn't like about it. Because the male presenter and I think was named Andy Crane. Yeah, it was, and the two of them used to kind of walk between going around and chatting with other kids and getting input off them. But Games Master, I think, was on a different level.
Yeah. Well, it was sort of like the main one, wasn't
the main one. Yeah.
It kind of
was.
inspired all the other ones after.
Yeah, it did. It absolutely did. Yeah. Like, I know there was other ones that came out like later on, like say obviously later on with the PlayStation and the Dreamcast and stuff. They were really good, like, but they didn't have that. They were just more like where they were doing like interviews or they were doing previews of games and just talking about stuff, but they weren't actually doing what Games Master was doing. Games Master was the best all round show in that regard for what it was doing because it had everything.
Yeah,
it did do when you think about it.
Yeah.
How long did it last? Was it a half an hour episode? I remember it used to be on Channel 4. Was it half an hour or was it an hour an episode? Half an hour, wasn't
it? Yes, half an hour, 30 minutes. It used to be on, I think, at 6 o'clock. 6 or 6:30, and that was the highlight of it.
Because I do remember, was it you, Dig, that recorded? It was one of the episodes in '97 when Mortal Kombat 4 came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you took it over to the
3D,
house.
The 3D Mortal Kombat, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it was that you took it over to the house and we sat and we must have watched it about 3 or 4 times and we kept rewinding it just watching the Mortal Kombat segment when they were playing the tournament.
Yeah. I always remember because he done the death move with Liu Kang where he turned into a dragon.
Turned into a dragon, yeah.
Now I remember him.
Yeah. And they just kind of like flung him around the screen. I was like, wow. Mortal Kombat,
the death moves in Mortal Kombat 4, whatever you can say about it, but the death moves were hilarious. It was completely like over the top, like, you know.
Especially when the death move was performed in Liu Kang.
Yeah, because it always felt. Because it felt very cartoony, if you will. I think that's what made it even more funnier. You know?
Yeah.
I like it. That was hilarious. Very, very good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Games Master was definitely the best, I thought, out of the video game TV shows. Did any of you watch the new one that came out there? I think it was about 2 years ago.
No, I was looking. I think you mentioned it to me there not too long ago about that it was put up on YouTube. I did manage to find some of the episodes. I did plan to go and sit down and watch them, but I just never got around to it. But I do plan on doing it at some point.
Yeah, no, it's good. They're all on YouTube. Full episodes, you know.
Yeah.
It was. I actually enjoyed it. Like they kept a similar type format, and I thought it was pretty good. You know.
I remember you saying it to me, all right, but I completely forgot all about it.
But again, like with the likes of the TV shows there, like with Games Master and all those other ones, aside from the magazines, I remember when we knew that those TV shows were going to be on, we would be clued in watching TV. We'd always make sure that we had the TV booked for that half an hour or whatever it was on a Thursday evening. We would tell the folks, no, Mum, Dad, that's it, we're watching. And they would let us. We're like, oh yeah, sure. They were glad because like they're getting peace, a bit of peace and quiet. And but that's where we would always get zoned in, because if we weren't able to gain access to a magazine to find out information or something, there was always a good chance, because what they would do sometimes at the end of most of the shows, they'd always give a preview of what they were going to talk about in the next episode.
Yeah,
you know, like of an upcoming game or something like that, or maybe they might show a few hidden cheats or stuff that you could use. So we'd always be like, oh shit, we have to watch that and get stuck into it, like, you know.
Yeah. No, and the thing about it was, I'm pretty sure they aired at about 6 p.m. on I think it was midweek anyway. I can't remember what day exactly, but that would always be a follow up. So you'd be finished school, you'd be watching like whatever your favorite kids TV shows. They would finish about 5:30, maybe 6, and you would just flow straight on to Games Master.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, so it's perfect, like.
Yeah, because that was the deal in our house. I watched Games Master at 6 o'clock, and my mother would always watch, what do you call that Australian soap, Home and Away?
Oh,
that was on at 6:30. So
it kind of puts me in mind, like, I'm not going to say too much about it, but Friday nights here, when the folks used to go out, and even before we had the PlayStation, and Friday nights used to be deadly here. We used to have Father Ted, and then you had whatever else, and other certain TV shows. I'm not going to mention their names.
Oh yeah,
yeah. The Irish Fairs and of Home
but you had, them all. Yeah, but from 9 o'clock onwards, and when Fatherhead started, literally for the next 3 or 4 hours, you had about 3 or 4 or 5 shows back to back. Now, if you could stay up long enough without falling asleep, you were guaranteed to have a laugh and actually had a good night worth watching the TV. You know what?
Yeah, well, we're all computer generated images, so always good.
Yeah, yeah, but different nature altogether. Yeah, but it was funny.
Yeah, those were the days actually, because everything's so plentiful now. You can just watch it whenever you want.
Yeah,
you had to really make the time.
You had to make the time. Yeah, you definitely had to set aside the time.
Nowadays, it's just they don't understand.
No,
I'm going, there was no PlayStations, there was no internet, there was nothing. If you wanted to look, if you wanted to find out things, you had to buy a newspaper, you had to buy a magazine, or it was just, you go and talk to somebody that had it or knew something about it. And
but you remember when we got of age, when we were allowed to actually go out, like say, especially like even when I went, like we were like in secondary school and stuff, when we were allowed to venture out on our own a wee bit further, when our folks started letting us go into town on our own. And that was generally what we'd be doing. Either we going in to buy a magazine or even just to go in and have a look. And you remember some of the evenings after school, or even say on a Saturday morning, we may not have even had pocket money that week, but we would always go in just to see what the latest magazine was. And it would actually take us about a half an hour just to get into town. And there might be 1 or 2 shops that along the way, the likes of a couple of ones down the Avenue Road. And we would even stop off in them just to see if there was anything there. And if there was nothing there, then we would tip off up the town, up to the shopping centre, which was usually the go-to place. But it would take you about a half an hour to get there. But those were the things that I always enjoyed, because you were getting exercise, but you were having the crack, you were talking about the games, you were passing the time, but you couldn't wait to just get to see what was there. Now you didn't know, you didn't always get to see what you wanted to see, but it was a good excuse to pass a few hours, like during the day or even at the weekend. You had something to do. You know
where ended up being my favourite place to buy the video game magazines, even when I was into basketball or football. Just the go-to spot for me then was Sloan's.
Yeah,
because they had everything.
They had a lot of stuff.
Little small shop. They had
basically, you think about that was our first stop on the way.
Yeah. And they were so good too, because I remember times where like a certain magazine, I'd say they'd such and such come out yet, like say Games Master, the August edition come out, and she was like, "Is it not there?" And I was like, "No, I don't see it." And she would go through the itinerary and she'd be like, "Oh no, we don't have that, but come back in 2 days and we'll have it for you."
And they would keep it for you. You keep a copy of it for you. Yeah,
they were really good. She'd say, "Do you want me to put your name on it?" And yeah, please, yeah, perfect. They were so good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just cool times,
Yeah.
That it's like everything else. Like, and I think I was saying this to you before, Dick. I think for us, we were very fortunate. I think we definitely grew up in the best era of games, without a doubt.
Yes.
So we did by mile.
The best thing about us, we got to see the good pixel graphics.
Yeah.
And then we were on that train that led us into the polygons and
the 3D generation. Yeah, because we got to witness that all on there right in front of us, like
and that serves us well, because like when you start up a game like say Resident Evil 4 remake or Red Dead Redemption, and you look at it and you're like, my God, like, can you remember the first version of this game? It was like, wow, when you think of Grand Theft Auto now versus Grand Theft Auto 1, it's like you wouldn't even say they were the same franchise, because they look so different now.
Yeah, the worlds apart,
exactly as they always did.
Yeah, totally worlds apart.
You reverse that, say, for talk's sake, and give somebody now Grand Theft Auto 1 on the PS1 and say, this is what we grew up with. They wouldn't even play it.
To be honest, I actually have tried with some of the nieces and nephews, and they'd be like, "What's that?" They no heeding it whatsoever. You're like, that's what we grew up and played, and then they play. And if you did get them to play, they play it for 5 minutes, and they realise it's too difficult. No, I'm not playing that anymore. And then they go back to playing. They go back to playing like Fortnite or something mindless. You know,
they just don't understand the beauty of games. They just don't understand. Kids these days.
You know what you need to do, Peter? Boot up. If you have a version of Space Harrier, say, here, have a go with that. See if
Jesus. I'm telling you.
Oh, man.
You know how bad that was, right? Like, even when we're going back to magazines, right? I was in second year in the tech. And I remember one of the lads that was in my class, and we would hang around. Steve, well, you knew him because when you come into the school, Stephen was in the highest class, I was in the lowest class, but Steve didn't really like any of the lads in his class. But instead he'd come around and hang around with me and the lads I would be hanging around because all we did was just talk about video games. So Steve would just fit right in. Yeah. And he got on as well with the lads I got on with, even more than I got on with them. And we'd always be talking. I remember the man had an old magazine. And he was like, oh yeah, I have this old magazine. He says, it does have cheats for Master System games in it. And I mentioned some of the games, because this was before, I'd never played a PlayStation at that point, like. And, what was it? He gave me a loan of the magazine. It was actually, we were in the home economics class, and I remember at the start of the class, he took the magazine out of his bag and he gave it to me. And I remember at lunchtime going and having a look at it. And I had cheats in it for Space Harrier, and I was kind of like, I kid you not, I was like, this is crazy. How the hell? I've been playing this game. I've had this game since I was like 11. I've been playing this game for nearly 4 years. And it's only now I'm finding cheats for it. Now, they were hard to pull off because there were certain combinations. You only had a time limit to do it when there was on the game over screen. Before it ended, you had to input, I think, 1 or 2 button combinations or hold down buttons on a certain controller. Or even sometimes... sometimes you'd have to hold the button down on the controller in port 2. Which wouldn't even be tied to the first port. You'd have to hold it down on the second one or vice versa. I can't remember what it was. But I eventually managed to get it to work, and I'm like, if I had known this, I could have... And there was times I actually played the game that much that I did manage to get there was 18 levels in it. I think the highest I ever got to was like level 15 or 16. Now I got close, but not before it drove me mad. But the fact is, then I realised right, there's cheats there for additional continues. It meant you could just keep continuing on. You get an extra, I think it was a limited amount, but it was enough to get you through the game. As long as you were good enough to get there with your initial life, so you were doing all right. And only for that, that was how I actually managed to finish the game. If I did not know about those cheats, I would not have finished that game. Yeah. Simple as that. That'll tell you how much it drove me freaking crazy. But then again, I was at that time as well where I was just that addicted to games, and I was just so stubborn, I would not let a game defeat me. The only game I did have to walk away from was another game we had on the Master System. It was called My Hero. But the only reason why I had to give up on that is because it really is endless. There is no finishing to it. It just keeps going on. Yeah.
You're ready to pass out.
Yeah.
There was another one.
No, but I think of all the Master System games we had, I think of all the Master System games that we had, I think I finished, apart from that one, I think I finished at least majority of them, you know, but not without nearly screaming the place down and getting into fights with you a lot over them.
That's kind of, when you think about it, we didn't have loads of money to buy loads of games. So
we didn't. We were running demos.
Game. Yeah.
We had X amount at Christmas. And then that's basically what you got. And that was you for the year, was the demos that kind of kept us ticking over.
Birthdays came up, Yeah,
you might get a game or something like that then. But that was it for the rest of the year. It was just we were all bunching together to get a magazine with a demo in it, or we'd bunch together and get a game, which didn't happen too often. But that's the way it was. But you know what? We appreciate it.
Oh,
that's the truth. I'm going to ask you another thing.
Go on.
So you get a laugh out of this. And because it's about thickening me too. The Resident Evil PlayStation 1, the cheat to get, was it double ammo or, no, it wasn't infinite ammo, it was, or to make it easier.
That was on the director's cut.
Yeah. Where did you find out about that cheat? Obviously a magazine.
It was a magazine, yeah.
I found out about it from Peter.
Obviously from a magazine.
And I found it in the magazine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard a rumour that he was in Easton's for about 2 hours.
Yeah. I probably was.
The reason why I'm bringing this up, because I fucking knew that, because it's going, the time that he said it done, and I'm asking when he's playing, how did you do that? And it was probably the easiest cheat ever. And could I fucking get it? And you used to be in stitches laughing at me.
Yeah, we were leaving you to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah. And I did it, and I didn't even know how I did it. And it was the easiest thing. I think it was just hold left directional pad for 5 seconds, and that was it.
No, the right button.
Or the right D-pad, and going.
See, there you go. Years later, he still didn't get it right.
Yeah, still didn't. And I'm pressing button after button after button. This went on for about half an hour plus. And boys, will you just tell me? No. Boys, will you just tell me? I want to go. Please tell me how to do it. No. And
we were taking privilege and talking life out of you.
You just fucking tortured me because I'm cracking up. And I got it, and I don't even know how it happened. But I'm going, where did that come from? A fucking magazine.
But sure, even when I think back, like I remember we were talking about it in a previous episode way back, like when we were playing Resident Evil 1, and like remember we used to play it every week. But sure, it was actually you and Mark that found how to progress beyond the underground, you know, with Barry dropping the rope down, and it was so simple. All you had to do was just stand and freaking wait, and we didn't cop that on. Yeah, I know. I told us, and we didn't. We just keep going on going, and it wasn't until
the headstone at the back, and then you go down.
But it was you and Mark, just by chance. I think you were having the crack, or you were talking, and she's forgot about the game.
And then
got distracted, and then all of a sudden it played out a different thing. You're like, oh, jeez, we didn't know about that, you know. That tell you how we stumbled across a lot of that even proves the point as well. A lot of the games and the stuff that we found in the games we played, we didn't just get from magazines. A lot of the stuff we found just because we stumbled across it by accident.
Yeah,
but they were the best moments.
But that's what made it. That's what made it even more enjoyable. And that's why, to like me, and I know you agree, why Resident Evil stands up there with the games that gave us that, because Resident Evil was one of the first depictions of choice-based elements in it, because when you'd done something, it had a different outcome, or you'd done something else, or if you were in a different room, or you picked up this item at a different time, or whatever, you could have different interactions and different things to play out as the game went on, and we'd never seen that before.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool feature.
Yeah.
Actually, I'd prefer if they brought that back, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Franchise,
yeah.
Because it gives replay value then. Or maybe I'll get this
definitely.
Like, yeah, when you think about it, the replay value in that game was immense. Like, hours we put into trying to figure out everything in that game.
Even just the gameplay of that game was immense. And you would have got hours and hours of replay just playing through the game.
Yeah.
But the fact that they give you... Was there 4 total different endings or 5? Because you could finish the game with just Jill and Chris. No, just Jill, right?
Yeah.
They could, whoever you were playing as, you would
then you could get
the game with them.
Yeah, then you could play Jill and Barry, because you could get Barry killed in it as well, and then you could finish with the 3 of them, and then it was similar with. So yeah, there was 6 possible endings basically.
Yeah, because the best ending was you saved Barry, you saved Chris and Jill.
Yeah, and the same one Chris's campaign where you saved Jill and Rebecca.
Yeah. You got everybody on board. So that was cool, because you know it adds a bit of replay value. Hopefully, I'd like to see that reintroduced, because it was really good.
Yeah.
So, going back to the main topic of magazines, was there like other magazines that you remember that would have been maybe not as frequent as the ones we mentioned? For me, I think there's computer and video games. CVG was one of the ones that I would tend to go to. Outside
that was the one I just couldn't remember it. I knew it was one beginning with C, and that's the one.
You know, the funny thing is, just when you mention that, like as well, like the CVG magazine, right? There was one of our other brothers, Steve, right? He wasn't as big into video games as we were, but he'd always tried to buy that CVG magazine. That was his favourite magazine. He would buy that a lot.
Yeah.
So he would. Yeah. So that's how we would always get our information.
If Games Master didn't have something to interest me, it would be CVG after that.
Yeah.
And when we think about, so I think if we can talk about the official PlayStation magazine, because it was the first one to introduce like the demos of games, which was incredible, because let's face it, we didn't have loads of money to buy games, but if you got the demos, you got mini games.
Oh, that's it, yeah.
Keep you entertained for so long. Do you remember
we used to get beforehand?
Just quickly about when we used to get the demos of the football games like PES.
Yeah.
Soccer.
Yeah.
You get 40. You get one half, and we would play that to death.
Stephen knows all about that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the youngest fella, him, and he scored from the halfway line on him.
Remember that?
Yeah, Damon comes running. Hey, no, I scored the screamer from the halfway line, and kind of went in, and there's Steve with his head in his hands, and there's the replay, and you see Damon kicking the ball from the halfway line and lobbing the keeper.
He
and
didn't
Steve
even try to kick the ball.
He did. That's what I say. He wasn't even trying to do it,
wasn't
and he ended
shot.
up.
He was kicking a long ball.
Yeah,
that's
so rubbish.
That's why I always
straight in. I said you only got to play a half an hour. I said, well,
one half.
Time was even one
yeah,
half.
It's probably like 2 minutes or something.
It's probably about 5 minutes or something like that.
2 to 5 minutes, yeah.
Deadly. Never forget that. No, what I was going to say is, see, like obviously with the official PlayStation magazine, and so you got the demos. Obviously, the demo enticed it to get it because obviously that was like basically a free mini game, a trial. Yeah. But was there any magazines that you'd be looking at and going, there's games in it that you'd say, yeah, I like, and all that, and you want to buy the magazine and say, no, you dump that, and then you go and look at another magazine, and you keep looking at magazines, but you don't buy any, even though you have the impulse to do it. There is games in it that you want to go, no, I'm not fucking, I don't want to buy it.
No, go on ahead.
No, the reason why I'm saying it, because obviously with cost and the games, you'd say to yourself, the games, you wanted them, but kind of like myself, I had to do my research to totally to see if I actually wanted it or not. If I didn't, it'd be more or less, why am I looking through these magazines? There's nothing here I want.
Yeah.
I think you'd go uptown just to see the game magazines, but there's nothing in there that you kind of want. You know what I mean? So
I get what you're saying. Yeah, because there was an odd time where I go in and I'd be like, there's nothing really.
Yeah, there's nothing there.
Yeah. We would get days like that. We'd be kind of leaving deflated and disappointed. There wasn't much there. Yeah.
I think I used to. If I didn't see a magazine I liked, I'd keep my money and go maybe rent out the game. You know, for the night or whatever it was, weekend.
I do remember when I bought, or let's say we bought our first PlayStation magazine, and it was in June '97. And
do you remember the dates?
June '97. Yeah. Jesus Christ!
And it had 4 playable demos on it. There was a playable demo of remember Excalibur 2555. Yeah.
He still has them, I bet you.
Excalibur. I remember that.
I have. What do you call it? I've photographic memory. I do remember these things, especially things like that stand out. They definitely, I definitely remember them. But anyway, it was 4 games on it. There was Excalibur 2555 AD. I know it got slated in magazine reviews. A lot of people didn't like it, but we actually loved that demo because we played the hell out of that.
I didn't like the game, but I loved the demo. Yeah.
Yeah, the demo was brilliant, and especially with the Del Boy kind of the stranger. He's like, hey, you over here. You know, it was deadly, the wheeler dealer kind of lad. I loved the exploration on it, even though it was clunky as hell, but it was really cool. But anywho,
the demo was the best part of the whole game.
What other demos was on it? There was monster trucks, a level on a volcano level of monster trucks. Now I had played that previously on a demo that Mark had when I first played the PlayStation. He had an early beta demo of it, and I thought it was pretty cool. But this one was more of a fleshed out demo. You could only do 3 laps, and then there was an early demo of Porsche Challenge. It hadn't been fully fleshed out because the controls were still very vague and weary. It wasn't the same as the full game. It was still cool. But what else? Micro Machines V3. There was single player, and there was also you could play 2-player in the demo as well, so you could play head to head against your mates. I remember us playing it a few times, getting separate controllers and stuff, and that was really cool. But the one thing I enjoyed about the demo so much, right? The magazines is one thing. You were getting the magazines obviously to read through the articles, and what I liked that they were giving previews of the games that were coming up the next month. That's what I always loved as well. So you get excited for that. But the fact is that we would buy the magazines, and even at the time we didn't have a PlayStation of our own, but we knew we were going to rent out the PlayStation at the weekend. So even though obviously we were still playing Resident Evil and we were getting that every month, and you'd always get an additional game, but we were stacking up the demo discs because we were playing the demos equally as much. So by the time we would have a PlayStation or get access to one, you had a crap ton of games to play. And sure, you know yourselves, we got way more fun out of a lot of those demos than we ever did out of the full games.
Smith, you even think about it. We had more demo discs than we had actually full games.
We did for a while, we did actually, yeah. Because it got to a point, once we got the first one or two, because the second one that came out a month later in July, it had the third Ridge Racer game, was it Rage Racer? That was awesome. Now you could only do one lap on it. It was short, and then you had Agent Armstrong. That was a cool demo, even though it was tough because there was loads of exploration. Yeah, and there was loads of hidden quirky areas and stuff like that. But that was tough as hell. Then you had another racing game. It was a bit like Micro Machines called Speedster. It was like a top-down kind of thing, and really cool music in it. And then you had there's another quirky game, Little Big Adventure.
Yeah.
That was, it was, yeah, it was quirky, but it was tough, but it was fun, you know. It was a cool game. So there was 4 demos in that, and then it gradually, they were the 2 demos we first got. Actually, if anything, out of all the demos, they were among some of the best that we ever got because they had some of the best games on it. But
I'll give you one.
It was mixed, but I think what ended up happening after that, just before you say something now, what we used to do is then we'd all start bunching together every month, and we would deliberately go out and try to buy as many magazines as we could because we knew later on that year in '97 that we were going to get our own PlayStation for Christmas. So we were stacking up the demos, so we'd be going out every month to try and buy as many of them as we could.
Oh, you will.
Well, I was anyway. Yeah, I definitely was. It's like everything else. Once I took a notion on something, especially with video game related, I kid you not, for me it became a new addiction all over again.
2 days before Christmas, is camping under the Christmas tree.
Yeah. There was nothing else. I didn't care about anything else. It was just video games was my life. That was it. You know. I did have a problem.
One demo, one magazine. And I think you can all recognise this. I have to say, I totally enjoyed it myself. And we got it as one level, Nightmare Creatures.
Oh yeah, that was October 97.
You lose in a month. October 97?
Yeah.
Holy Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
You remember that one, Diggs? Nightmare Creatures?
There was a couple of other demos. There was beat 'em up, kind of like Streets of Rage style. It was Fantastic Four on that. There was.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
But you know what? To me, Nightmare Creatures.
There was a demo. I think there was a demo of Formula One. I think there was a demo of Formula 197 and that. Like I don't know whether it was a video demo or was a playable demo, but I think there was a demo of Formula 1.
There was definitely a playable demo of Formula 1. I remember that.
Yeah.
But I remember the Excalibur demo and the Nightmare Creatures demo. Right now, I could be wrong, but this is just my opinion. When I played the demos, I think it was only one level on each Nightmare Creatures and Excalibur, and they were brilliant. But see, when we got the full game, I did enjoy them. I did enjoy either game.
It was very tough. Very tough.
You didn't like Nightmare Creatures, no?
No, I did, but just to me that level, too, like it was an old England.
Oh yeah, London, yeah.
London, yeah.
I will admit though, I love the game, but
after that then it was just it just didn't do it for me. I enjoyed it, and I loved it. It's the same with the Excalibur one.
Right.
I enjoyed it, but see when I actually got to play the full game, it didn't do it for me. I think the best levels were given to us on the demo, and then after that, then when you got to play the full game, it didn't do it for me. Now, that's just my opinion. Everyone else is different, but no, it didn't do it for me. I couldn't go and sit and play the whole game.
I can get that. I can understand that. You know, as we said about Excalibur, played the demo. I loved the demo. And then I think I got the game, wasn't it? And I was like,
yeah, you got the game, and eventually then we got the game then later, I think.
It just didn't work for me after that.
No, it didn't. And Nightmare Creatures to me was the same.
The funny thing with likes of those demos, do you remember like back with certain other games, like even with Resident Evil 2 and stuff, because you were looking forward to certain games and you were hoping to get the full game, even though like they would say probably maybe a month or 2 away. But do you ever remember that, like, say if a game was say still like 2 or 3 months away from being fully released, which in many cases Nightmare Creatures was, because it wasn't released until late '97, like early 1998 or whatever. And I think there was some delays when it was released over here in Europe. But do you remember, like, within those weeks or months, it felt like forever because you were hoping and you were waiting with such anticipation for a game that it just felt like an eternity for it to come out, like, you know?
Yeah. I wasn't disappointed when we did get it. Loved that game. That's actually one game that I would love to see a modern version of.
Yeah, well, that game that you always rave about was the Bloodborne.
Yeah.
They always mention that Nightmare Creatures was, and they do reckon that Nightmare Creatures was a massive inspiration for that.
Yeah, even I thought that when I first played the
Yeah,
Bloodborne. I was like,
because I
going
remember
through
you
London,
mentioned
the
there was a lot of
gothic streets in
throwbacks.
London. Yeah,
Yeah.
they have dogs that chase you. There was dogs and nightmare creatures,
Mm.
and yeah, it had that vibe, and I just thought, this is really like a modern day nightmare creatures. But like Bloodborne, it's a Souls like game,
Yeah.
they're quite difficult, whereas the nightmare creatures was difficult, but
It was
not
tough for a
extremely
PS1
difficult.
game. It was very tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side of it, one game that did work for me was going back to, remember you said there was a demo and it was a Formula 197. You had Murray Walker commentating
Yeah.
Oh,
when he was
Yeah.
that was
about.
mind blowing actually.
The
That game.
the
And
first two Formula One games, I have to admit, are my favourite, pretty much of all time. They were the best. They have the most
when we
authentic,
bought
I
the full
found.
game, we bought it on Platinum at the time. Remember you said the Platinum games were about
But I
40
think
Oh
quid or
yeah.
less.
did you
And
bought the full
I
game
loved it.
didn't you? I think originally, I think you bought Formula 197 originally,
I
nearly
did. Yeah.
from day
Yeah.
one, nearly. I think.
Yeah, because
We
I
had
remember
it as
bringing
well.
it. I brought it over to your house
Yeah.
before you bought your
Yeah.
version. I
Yeah.
brought it over there, and I remember Peter one night. It was probably like one of
Loved
those
it.
weekends where your mum and dad went out, and we had like snacks and video games. And I never forget you done the full campaign on the Formula One. Like from was it what was the first race? No, it
Oh,
was
was it
Australia.
in Australia?
Is Australia the first
Oh,
venue?
I think so.
it could have
Yeah,
been at the time.
and you
Could
done
have
the
been.
whole thing. Now, obviously, you didn't do the grand, whatever,
What was
67
it?
laps or
Five,
No, it's
ten
like
laps
just
a
like
race or something.
it was like 3 or 5 laps, wasn't it, per race or something like
Five,
that?
yeah,
ten
yeah,
laps a race or something.
I
Yeah.
think it was maybe about five or something like that. And I remember you actually sat the whole night and you played it from the whole campaign.
Oh,
And
because I loved the first Formula One game. Because the first time
mm,
I ever played a demo, it was actually a demo, and that funny enough in Mark's house when I got to play the PlayStation for the first time. Like, right, obviously at Resident Evil and all that, but the demos for me were equally as good. And Formula One and the Wipeout demo was just fucking complete, especially the Formula One because
yeah,
it blew my mind. The sounds, Murray Walker, and it was just it was the first
yeah,
game
But
that I ever
graphically, the
played
sound of it, and even the
graphically, but
demo was
it
brilliant.
felt it was the most authentic game that I felt like it was very
Yeah,
reflective of real life. Yeah, that you
yeah. And
watched on the TV.
that was the
Yeah,
benefit of going to
yeah,
CD-ROM and the
yeah,
PlayStation's audio
yeah,
capabilities.
yeah,
Like you had actually Murray Walker commentating. Like
yeah.
yeah.
You had everything that you
you never had a racing game where there was commentary.
yeah, and you had all of the authenticity and nostalgia, everything that was there from sitting on a
That
Sunday
was fully
evening
licensed,
watching
right?
TV. Yeah,
I fully licensed, yeah.
and you could
Like,
literally you could control it.
mm,
It was mind blowing. It
yeah,
really
yeah.
was.
It was, and you had the multiple viewpoints.
Mm.
You could
And
do the
then
front fin.
like you said, F197 just expanded on that.
Yeah,
So it did.
I tell you, there's one other demo. I'm pretty sure we played this on demo before I ended up getting the full game, and that was Colin McRae.
Oh,
Colin Gray.
that was. I remember that. I got that. I remember Dig for my 16th birthday, and it was with the obviously with the UK PlayStation magazine. If I be honest, that is one of the best demo CDs I've ever bought because it had Colin McRae on it. There was one of the WCW games, NWO. Now that game wasn't great, but graphically it looked very very good. There
Yeah,
was oh jeez, there was actually a playable demo of Gran Turismo on it as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you
hmm
could play as the Subaru, and I think you could pick another car as well. Uh, what else was there was a lot of really good games in that demo, but the highlight one was because remember we knew it was coming out, and it was just for Colin McRae, but I didn't realize it was actually you that found it out. I remember the very first track playing was Monte Carlo. I thought it was awesome. I was just like, I was flat playing, and I didn't realize because I played it a couple of times. It's like, oh, this is freaking deadly. And then you came over, and I think you were at school. I think, and you think you took the half day, and you came over, and you said, because I took the day off. Or actually, actually,
it
no,
was
we were. No, it
probably
was on. No, so it
Rich.
was during the summer. We were during the summer months. I think you were doing something else, and you came back, and you said, "Oh, Peter, can I take a loan of that for an hour or two?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, walk away, you know." And then you came back later on that evening, I think after tea, I think it was about 5 or 6 o'clock, and you turned around and you said, Peter, you know that there's hidden tracks in that demo disc? I'm like,
Mm.
which? Like, and he's like, go Colin McRae. And he says, I'm going to have to find them all. And it's
You
like,
just have to keep
he
playing.
says, there's three apart from them, there's three in total that I've found. And I was like, Are you sure? It's like, because I haven't, it's just I've only been playing the one, and only one was showing up for me. But that was the thing; it was randomly generated. You never knew which one you were going to get every time you played. That was the interesting part of it. So I remember, and you said, "Oh no, like we'll play it now. We'll play a few games and see if we get it." And lo and behold, went and played it. And after I think the second or third race, it played Monte Carlo. I think for the first race. Then Australia came in, and then we played Australia a couple of times, and then later on, then after about say 20 minutes, then got the track in New Zealand. And for me, it was just unreal because it had rain and what the weather effects, and it was just like holy crap.
That's why I loved about Formula 197, the demo we were playing, the rain effects, everything was so real, it was deadly.
That's to say, I wouldn't have found those extra, like say that, only for the fact that you found it,
Yeah.
There was another one as well, a racing game. I don't know if you remember it. I don't know if we had it in a demo, or if it was in a demo, or we actually had the original game. I think it was in a demo first. Now, I could be wrong, but I loved it. So, now, let me see if we're getting this right. The Toka Touring Car Championship.
That was on that was on a demo late.
Touring Car Racing or Touring Car
Championship. That was a demo that came out in. That demo was awesome as well because that had a load of racing games on it. It had a playable demo, I think, of Crash Bandicoot 2 on it. Yeah. There was that. I think there was a demo. Do you remember?
Loved it.
There was another demo of another racing game. It was called Felony 1179. Remember, it was mental. You could drive into everything and just crash and smash into everything. Like, the handling was horrendous in the game, but it was a lot of fun.
No, it wasn't. Toka was my game.
But Toka was brilliant because Toka was the first proper simulation-focused game apart from Formula 1 that we had played in, like with regards to racing games.
It was from the same team, right? It was Codemasters.
Yeah, Psygnosis made the Formula 1 games at the time.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Colin
McRae and Toka were made by Codemasters,
Yeah.
I love Toka. I really did.
Specialty.
I love Toka. I really did. Loved it.
It was difficult to read the full game, but.
Yeah.
No, that's why I mentioned it because I couldn't remember was in a demo first, and then the real game. Because I know I played it, but I just couldn't remember was I played a demo first and then the game.
Yeah. I remember with Toka. I remember even Mark will even tell you he loved that game as well because I remember he just moved out of his house where he lived in Green Acres and he moved down the road, and I remember going down to his house one weekend and he had Toka Touring Car Championship because he had the Platinum Edition, and I remember we sat for the entirety of the weekend, myself and himself, and because the championship's long in that game, very long. We sat for the entire weekend playing through the season. We take a turn in each race. We do a race each. And we played through it. And just had an absolute blast playing that game. Yeah, it was tough as fucking old boots because it's very sensitive. You skid off the road very easily.
Yeah. It was very much more simulation over.
Yeah. But that was one of the best racing games I've ever played on the PlayStation.
Yeah, I remember us doing something similar with Colin McRae. Remember we used to do a stage each?
Yeah, we did,
yeah. I think we did that with a lot of games, didn't we?
We did that with a lot of games, yeah.
That was how you passed the controller around.
Yeah.
Everyone got to go at it.
Yeah, because I remember we
did, yeah.
I remember they, you got that year, because Gran Turismo had come out early enough in 98. Now I know it was released originally in 97 in Japan, but it didn't come out in America and here until 98. I think when was it, March or April or was it May in 90? Actually, it was close to the summer holidays when Gran Turismo came out. I think it was, it would have been
not too close now because I remember being in school and everybody.
Yeah, because I remember you go, and but I do remember when that demo came out in June. I think Colin McRae came out about a month later, didn't it? I think in July, or was it a week or two later? I think it didn't come out too long later.
I'm trying to remember.
Because I remember you bought it on the week of its release.
Colin McRae.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I did. I definitely got it. I got it in Eddie McGuire's and
yeah.
But excuse me. No, I'm trying to think around Gran Turismo. No, Need for Speed 3 took me away from Gran Turismo.
Yeah. Yeah, in between that, you Need for Speed 3.
After all of that.
Yeah, it was after all them. Yeah. But they were the 3 big games of '98. I think for me, especially the 3 big racing games. 3 of the best racing games, pretty much.
Yeah.
Freaking awesome. You know.
Yeah. They look. Yeah. No. Definitely. You know what I mean.
But again, a lot of those games, like you said, stemmed from the likes of the magazines. Because even how we found out about Colin McRae was reading through the magazines again.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
That's how I found out about it. You know.
Yeah.
So.
98. I'm trying to remember. Looking here online, just says 98 for release date. Doesn't exactly say when.
I would definitely consider 98 to be one of the best years for games.
Yeah. Because we had was it 98 we had Resident Evil 2 as well, or was that before?
Yeah, we had Resident Evil 2 in 98 as well.
Yeah, I was going to say 98 because...
Yeah, because you remember me and you, Dig, went up to Dublin on the train to get it.
Yeah, you got it. The 2 years was up on your own,
we took a day off school for that, right?
Yeah, we took a day off school to get it, yeah.
Imagine how that.
Yeah, because you remember we had those vouchers that we got in the paper, it gave you £5 off. You're like, sweet.
It was right.
Yeah.
Smith's.
Yeah.
It was right, you used to get vouchers from the fucking local newspaper, it was right.
Yeah.
Because the Sunday World was doing a special where you cut out the voucher, took it up to Smith's and you got £5
and you got £5 off him. Yeah. Jesus, I fucking remember that now.
Because I remember the shop didn't open till after 11 and me and Diggs, and there was a queue of people waiting outside to get in to get it, and we won the first day out. So
I vaguely remember we were actually worried that, oh no, we'll not get a copy of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was just so many of them.
It was crazy the amount of them.
Normally when we go to Dublin, we'll spend the whole afternoon as well, but we were like, no, we got to get it now.
We only went up really to get that, and
the first thing you're going for is Smith's. That's it.
Yeah. Oh, I think we did buy a couple. We did buy a couple of things, but that was really the thing.
There was a few things on the day in Smith's that and other places.
Yeah.
You think about it, right? This going back to magazines, obviously in the newspaper as well, but still all relevant. Like going back to magazines and everything. You had vouchers. You got discount vouchers for games in the magazines, right? Now some of them, depending, it could have been only for UK, but they could be used here as well. And then like newspapers and every discounts for games that say when they were released, you got £5 off, you got £2.50 off, or was it a trade-in or something like that? You could get such trade-in such game for such a game. Different things, you know what I mean? There was different avenues there, you know what I mean?
I do remember the UK PlayStation magazine, funnily enough, had like this thing, like a helpline. You remember it used to start advertising it later on, and then was used to call it power line. They used to have like a chat like number or that you could phone call in, and you could get help with specific games.
Yeah, I was just about to say that actually.
Yeah, and I just remember like
phone lines.
Yeah, because even around the time of '97, 98. They were heavily promoting. Now I actually bought a physical copy of it was the Princess Trust demo disc. I bought it on eBay over a year ago. Now, mind you, I spent like 30 quid on it, but back then you could get it for like a tenner. But then you see it's a collectible item now because I wanted to do a couple of videos on it on my YouTube channel, and but I remember that being massively promoted because what they were doing was it was an entry point into, like, obviously the money that was being made from it was being donated to charity, but they were also utilising this Princess Trust thing as a means to get young people into video games and video games development and stuff like that, you know, because they were even mentioning, remember the Net Yaros or Yarosi or whatever they call it, that kind of makeshift game dev kit that like me or you could buy, that you could develop games for the PlayStation, because they were also kind of trying to promote that in and around the same time. So the demos and even the magazines, because like that's why when I'm thinking in the magazines, because it was massively publicised in the magazines. So it was, there was another couple of games like when I think in the magazines, because you remember like there was a lot of advertisement spots in magazines. Like I remember even like with Resident Evil, seeing snippets of it like around the time I played it, and you started to see like loads of snippets like in Games Master and other bits that have like a massive like 1-page spread with an advertisement of it. I remember at Resident Evil there was one magazine kind of snippet where it showed literally an arm of a guy. His arm had literally been ripped off, and it just had the arm there with just all the bones and the sinews all just hanging off. And then it had a couple of screenshots of Resident Evil, and it had something else, and I can't remember. It was very controversial. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And but I think they were trying to go for the aesthetic. But that was one other thing that stood out to me with the likes of the magazines, was the fact is that the promotional advertisements that they used to use for all of these demo discs or upcoming games, and some of them used to be, how would you put it, very out there. But then again, it kind of falls in line. Do you remember all the likes of the old TV adverts?
There for you to buy it.
Yeah, but do you remember do you remember the real wacky marketing campaigns and adverts that used to happen for the PlayStation during the first few years? Like if when you think about it, like, right, you had Nintendo and you had Sega and stuff like that. Like, they had really cool adverts with the PlayStation. It was something else. It really was. That's why when you think of it, I think that's why so many PlayStations sold, because the marketing campaigns for it, like, and the magazines had a lot to do with that as well. Were just wacky. They were just really out there, like, you know.
Yeah, I remember some of the TV ads.
Yeah.
It was kind of, there was one, wasn't there, where, you know, people had odd shaped heads. Like, there was a girl who looked like she had an alien head, you know, big eyes and all that.
Yeah.
I remember that campaign.
Yeah. Just when I think of it, because I've like two just kind of like short stories. I just want to I want to say it before I don't I do remember
before you forget.
Yeah, before I forget. Yeah. I actually did have, like, we used to collect the UK PlayStation magazine demo discs. We had them collecting for a good while. Now, once we did kind of stop collecting them later on. I think it's just because obviously life got in the way. You started working and you were doing bits and pieces. So you kind of just, you know, you kind of, and plus the games were coming out for it. I think during the later stages of the PlayStation, don't get me wrong, they were cool, but they just weren't as enticing compared to the games of old. Didn't have the same appeal, I think, to some degree. Now, they were good, but you kind of just were like, because obviously life just got in the way and you just didn't, you forgot about it a lot of the time. But anyway, I remember when they started releasing the Irish UK the Irish magazine. So it was like a carbon copy of the UK magazine. But it had its own selection of demos and it had its own previews and stuff, and it was cool. But they only released like 40-something issues. Now, I do remember actually buying every single one of them, and for a long time I had all of the demo discs in the magazines. But I think what ended up happening was I ended up selling them all when we moved house a few years ago, and I had to sell a lot of stuff because I had nowhere to keep it, and I ended up selling the demos, which I do regret now because you can't find them anywhere now, you know. And I wish, now the only thing is that the Irish ones didn't have, you know, like the way you get the CD case and you get the graphics, you know, the inlays, with the wee card or the thing that would give you like a rundown of all the games and give you information about some of the stuff that was on the disc. The Irish one didn't give you that. It just gave you literally just the case, the demo CD, and it have a number on it with the PlayStation magazine logo or whatever. So it was kind of left to your own imagination what games would be on the disc to some degree. Obviously, you'd have to read the magazine, but if you were just too eager to look at it, you couldn't get it from just the case alone. So it wasn't as well presented as the English one, I will admit, but it was still cool having. But the games were different mix. Now, they were very similar to what we would have played or what we did have on similar demos, but there was always kind of a different mix of games. Like, they wouldn't all be the same as like the UK one. It wouldn't be a carbon copy. They'd always change out certain games. So at least it made it different, you know, that kind of way. So it was pretty cool, but I do regret getting rid of them because I actually could have used them this for creating content for my channel and stuff like that. You never know. Maybe I might be able to find maybe online somewhere someday. You never know. But the other story I just want to mention, like when we were talking about magazines, I remember when we used to go on holidays when we were younger, and we'd always buy magazines when we were on holidays with any bit of pocket money that we used to have. Now again, because we were getting older, like we say, you kind of growing out of like playing with toys and stuff like that. You were well past all that. So our other alternative was to sit and just, because we couldn't take the computers with us really on holidays. So the magazines were the next best thing that we had, obviously still at the time. And I do remember buying one of the PlayStation magazines. I can't remember whether it was the UK PlayStation magazine. It could have been Total PlayStation, or it was something. It was one of the PlayStation magazines anyway. I do remember that. And I remember there was segments in it of... It was written around 1997. There was one of them in particular. I remember we went on holidays one year, and they were talking about Batman and Robin that had just come out based off of the film. It was kind of like that first open world Batman game. Now, it was clunky and it didn't get good reviews, but people liked it because it was different, and it was very different for a Batman game. You could explore the whole of Gotham City and you could do loads of different missions. A bit like an early rendition of what Grand Theft Auto is now, that you didn't have to, how would you put it, do the main missions. You could literally go out and do side quests and just beat the crap out of people on the street and level up your character and stuff, and then you could go and do the mission. So it was kind of an early idea of that. But then they also had like reviews of Need for Speed 2. I remember reading about that, and I know it didn't get great reviews, but I still was intrigued by it. I was sitting there and reading it. I was like, oh, I remember like my folks would go off and shopping, and the boys and Steve and all that, because they were a wee bit younger than me, and they would go off out with the folks and stuff. I'd be sitting in the car reading the magazine. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't care, that kind of way, because I wasn't into anything else. But I remember when I was 16, we went to Clare and we stayed in a bungalow. It was the first time. That's what I say. For me, it was an important point in my life because like there was 5 of us growing up. It was the first time ever in my life that I ever had a room to myself, and I kid you not, it was crazy. Like the room wasn't overly big, but there was a single bed in it, and there was loads of room just for myself. Like, but it was great. It was bliss. The problem I had is that the boys, Steve included, I was 16. Steve was only about 14, about to turn 15, and every 5 minutes I got my magazine, and I remember particularly that I think it was a UK PlayStation magazine, because they'd done a preview on a game that had come out in Japan that looked like Resident Evil, but there was no zombies in it. It was called Deep Freeze. But at the time, I couldn't remember exactly what the name was. But I do remember them doing a whole preview page of it. And all I could see was the fixed camera angles, the 3D characters and stuff. And they were talking about the game. It was a bit like how a hotel had been, or like a big building, skyscraper, kind of like Die Hard to a certain degree, that had been taken over by terrorists, and a tactical team was sent in and it's your job to do blah, blah, blah. But it paid out like a Resident Evil style game. But in the article, I do remember them slating the game, saying that it was weird, kind of way, which it was, because I did get to play it years later, and I think it's pretty cool, but it is weird. But it's a very underrated game, in fairness to it. But I remember every 5 minutes the boys would go out to be playing football, or to be out with my dad and me kicking ball or whatever. But the boys that keep coming in, especially Steve O'Dell, was the worst. He'd be coming in because the boys couldn't hack the fact that I had a room all to myself, because I never got any peace when I was younger. So when I did manage to get a room of my own, they were in every 5 minutes. Steve would be poking his head in. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you up to? I'm sitting here reading my feckin' magazine. Will you just leave me the feck alone? And oh my god, the fucking torture me. And I remember Steve would just come in with his cheeky head. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you at? And I got so thick. I was just like, yeah, feck off and leave me alone. And I remember even screaming into my mum and dad, like, Mum, oh, Dad, will you get the boys away and leave me alone? And the boys, and they eventually did. Oh, just leave me alone. He needs his own space. But I remember that I couldn't even have 5 minutes, and all I wanted to do was just sit in the room on my own, lay in my own bed for once, and actually sit and read a feckin' magazine without being tortured. Because I had the boys used to follow me everywhere. I couldn't go anywhere without them wanting to know what I was doing. It puts me in mind of that. Like, it was one of those few moments. It was a stand-up moment for me, because it was like I had freedom, but at the same time I didn't. If you know what I mean, But again, that was one of the things, because I enjoyed just having that little bit of free time to sit down and just absorb all of the information. Because I literally, when I had the room to myself and the whole week, I had ample time to read through that magazine, or I think another magazine that I had as well. I read through the two of them literally cover to cover, maybe about 3 or 4 times. I took everything in, and that's what I loved about the magazines, in fairness.
Yeah, I can kind of, understand that.
I didn't have the privilege of what you have to say, and I was sitting there enjoying them. I was just more or less going to the shops and looking at them, apart from the one magazine that I did have with the Premier Manager. But at the end of the day, I looked at the magazines because I was looking for particular things. And then once I got what I was looking for and I was happy enough, that was it.
Yeah, I do remember though, like when we were getting excited for Resident Evil 2, that was also a big one as well, because I remember we used, like I said, we used to get a few magazines and we read articles, but I do remember one or two magazines. I think, Steve, you got one, and it had a full 2-page spread of Resident Evil 2. Now at the time, Resident Evil 2 was still going through that transition because it had recently only been scrapped in favour with the RE 1.5. And at the time, we didn't really know, because we were just like, oh, it's just Resident Evil 2. We just don't care. We want to play it. But we didn't know that the game had literally been something different. And it was going on to be the version that we would inevitably get. And I do remember reading the article. And it was funny because it was one of those things where I was like, at the same time when I was reading it, I was so excited for it. But at the same time, I know, like, I don't want to be reading it because I don't want to spoil it on myself. But you couldn't help it, because I'd never been more excited about a game ever in my life, apart from Resident Evil 2. And then the magazines obviously aided in that, because it gave, once you seen an article and once you seen something about it, once you knew there was something there, like you said earlier, you wanted to go and find out about it.
That's it. It aided every one of us, because if it didn't, we weren't playing that game because you didn't know much about it. You wanted it, but you needed to know what the game was about, and am I going to enjoy it?
But because it was Resident Evil 2, that was it.
You were bought and sold straight away.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah.
One question I was going to ask: strategy guides. Biggs.
Yeah.
Have you bought any? I can't remember now. I know I bought a couple. I'm trying to think. I know definitely Code Veronica I did buy, and Ocarina of Time, and I can't remember. Did I know it? But I think I did. Going back in the day, but definitely Code Veronica. I bought that official strategy guide. It didn't cost me 20 fucking punt at the time.
Yeah.
The one you use. Sorry, the one you used by a strategy guide for Final Fantasy, one of the Final Fantasies as well.
I was going to mention that too. Final Fantasy 7. I was going to mention that too, but definitely.
No, I didn't.
No, I did. I'm going. I can't remember where it was. It was Dublin anyway. It was Electronics Boutique or Virgin or something. But I bought one anyway.
Yeah, the official guides. I remember they were quite thick, weren't they?
Yeah. I think it was 20. I think it cost me 20 pounds.
Well, you're right. Yeah, it was 20, about 20 quid. I think at the time. Yeah.
I bought
a Mortal Kombat one. I remember definitely, and some. Steve, well, you gave me a strategy guide years ago. I think it was around the PS3 era or something like that.
No, what up? No,
it was a game. Well, it was a game that I had and I really enjoyed, and I think you bought the game too, but you never got around to playing it. So you says, "Oh, sure, I'll give you the strategy guide." I just can't remember now what it was.
I did buy two strategy guides for the Resident Evil Outbreak games in the PS2. I do remember buying the strategy guides for them because I wanted to try and figure out everything that the games had, but there was so much stuff in those games, you know. And the thing is, a lot of it was random. You were no guaranteed you'd unlock everything straight away. So
I was just looking on Amazon earlier on and looking at them, and do what? Someone's going for 60, 70 quid.
Oh yeah.
And I'm going, holy shit.
You mean the old ones, like?
Yeah, the old ones.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep the one I had. Do what? I probably still could have one or two of them up in the attic, you know what I mean? Because I'd be a gift for that.
Just when you're talking about, you know what I mean? Just when you're talking about strategy guys, I remember you getting a lot of magazines when we were younger, and a lot of times when you were getting the magazines like Games Master or a few of the other ones, and I remember the wee miniature book, kind of pocketbook size cheat codes, and there was there was a couple of them that actually had, like you said, I think there was one specifically that had bits for like the Street Fighter and even Mortal Kombat, and they had all like the fatalities and everything, but there was other ones that had cheats for all the games. I remember even you got one, I think was it Essential PlayStation, or there was one of them anyway, I can't remember what it was, or Total PlayStation. I remember you getting one, and you had a couple of these were out of pocket size books because they were even smaller than the normal ones you get. And I do remember one actually, you had, I think you gave it to me, and I don't know if I still have it. I think I might have it lying around somewhere now. I honestly don't know if I do have it anymore. But it had the full level guide for each of the levels in Excalibur 2555 AD, along with the cheats.
Oh yeah.
For Infinite Health.
Even having the guide didn't make me stick around for that game.
Yeah. But I do remember you having that.
Yeah, no, I did. Yeah, I got. Yeah, that's all part of the appeal of the. We talked about earlier. You're in the shop, or which one will I buy? And you say, oh, because I remember like a Games Master magazine having. Do you remember the? You still get them now. You know the pepperami sticks.
Yeah.
You got a free pepperami with it, or they might have something else free with it. And you're like, wow.
Exactly. Yeah.
Did have a poster? Did have a poster? I remember buying magazines just
for key ring or something like that.
Yeah, but I bought magazines just because of they had posters for Resident Evil 2. I remember, I think it was CVG had one. Do you remember the image of the for Resident Evil 2 where it's the zombie in a body bag, but it's zipped open enough that you can see his face?
Yeah. I do
remember having that poster.
Now that you mention, I do vaguely remember that. Do you remember, just even going back, like even again, like do you remember, like just when you're saying posters, did you ever remember the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 poster I had in the bedroom years ago? Remember we had the Ghostbusters wallpaper on the wall?
You'll have to remind me.
We actually had a.
Me too.
I actually had a Sonic the Hedgehog 2 poster, and it was based off of the Isle Ocean Zone from Sonic 2. It showed, like, I think Sonic was climbing up on something, and I think he was grabbing Tails. Tails had fallen off or whatever, and he was grabbing onto him. Or I can't remember what it was. Was Tails flying or one along that line? So we're climbing up on like something, and they were nearly falling off. But I got that poster, and it was a full massive poster to spread out. Like there was massive. The thing was huge, and it covered the whole wall. And I got that from one of the Sonic the comic episodes that I was telling you that I had bought way back. And I got it as it was actually at the centre of it, and you were able to pull it out, and obviously, and I remember hanging that up. I had that on my wall, Jesus, for about 2 or 3 years. So I did. And I got that from one of those early magazines that I bought.
Yeah, some of the stuff, like, on the topic of magazines, but on a different subject, like I remember when I got really into NBA basketball, I remember buying the basketball magazines, and it was really like the posters you used to get in some of the
class.
Yeah.
Do you remember? I
remember you had a deadly one of Michael Jordan.
I got that one. Do you remember? Do you remember Jock Stores?
Yeah.
Do you remember, like, I don't even know if you can get them anymore, but do you remember those shops that you flip over the posters and to be in a plastic casing?
Yeah.
And they just flip over, you just scroll through them, and then the posters were just folded up below, and they'd be all tagged by numbers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I used to love all that there. As a kid, that was it. Your wall was covered in posters and whatever.
Yeah, because I remember some of those posters used to get in magazines as well. But they were like double-sided posters, so you have different graphics on one side and different on another.
Yeah. And you could flip them around. Like, I think I'll change it this week. No, that was the appeal of them. Like, that stuff like that I really miss. Like, now that I, like, by the time, I suppose that's a bit silly to say, I was earning money anyway. I had a part-time job when I was a teenager, and then you were going out buying games and buying the magazines. But, like, I contemplated, like, now that I'm, working full-time, actually subscribing to magazines and having them delivered to the house, for the year. But you can't get them anymore. Like, there is no magazines.
A lot of them are gone.
I'm going to have to call into the likes of Eason's now to see what is still.
You hit the nail in the head, because I'm going to do the same, just to see, curious to see if any gaming magazines still.
Because it's something to look forward to. It's like, oh, my magazine arrived this month.
And you know what? I'd have no problem doing the exact same thing I did years ago. See if I see in the game magazine, I'll pick it up and I'll start looking through it.
I'm assuming that, like, PlayStation has a magazine, but, like, I guess that's, just, while we're on the topic of it all, like, the internet really killed magazines. There's no need for it anymore. I mean, all that source material used to just come from buying magazines. Now it's free.
I've often contemplated, just when I'm thinking of it there, like me doing all of the YouTube stuff, and especially because the fact is one of my channels I do it on the PlayStation. And I've often contemplated on maybe, like, at one point, like, building an email list and actually doing a newsletter, but doing, like, a monthly kind of, like, mini, like, magazine. And I have thought about this, where I would love to do it in the retro style of some of those older magazines, but just talk about the PlayStation, and then even have, like, segments, like, say, where you do previews of games, or even look over, like I do research online where I look at like early previews of games and then put my own spin on it and do my own words. But then also do like obviously like a cheat section with cheats for games and cheats of the month or whatever it is. But then even have a section maybe for like doing interviews with other like gamers or even other like YouTubers that create like similar content and stuff like that. You know.
Yeah.
I've often thought of doing something like that. Now, obviously, it's time consuming. You'd need to put a lot of time into it, which it's hard enough trying to just do the videos on its own. And the fact is, like, with having multiple channels, yeah, you're stretched as it is. But anywho, I always thought it would be a cool idea to do if I ever got the time. You know, that kind of way, like to do it in that old school style of like the magazines that we had growing up with. I think it would be a really good idea. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's there's no such thing as a bad idea, you know.
Exactly.
No,
and the fact is, there's enough information there. Like all we have to do is just go, like say online now. We can look at screenshots of a lot of those old articles. If you look hard enough, you will find them. Like you can find out what the covers look like, and all you do is just kind of replicate them and just change out certain things and make your own templates and stuff. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, be something that might be worth doing in the future. But again, finding time for it.
That's true.
Yeah.
Time, yes.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
It's definitely just going back on subscriptions. Like I'm definitely after, tomorrow I'm going to look up that and see what's still available. Because there's something nice about having the magazine in the hand, reading through the articles.
Yeah. The nostalgia feeling of it as well. But she says it's always just something nice. Just you can just scroll through, and it's just nice.
Yeah.
I mean, it brings back memories. You know what I mean?
It does, because even for me, like the one thing like I probably missed the magazines was probably the icing on the cake. But I think for me it was at the time when say that like we would gather together and we just go out and we'd have an agenda. Right, we're going into town. It'd be a nice morning or a nice day. Right, or we could even in after school,
like on a Thursday. It was pissing rain. We'd be walking.
And we still, and
if we were a town up, we would do it.
Do you remember like when they started building all those new houses down the back of our old estate, and then we used to go down that direction even into town as well.
Yeah.
And and it used to be great crack, like because we'd be just having the crack talking about games, or we'd be kind of talking about what we'd like to see or what we'd hope to see in a certain issue of a magazine or something like that, and be talking about other things. So you'd be talking and having the crack, and just while you're out and about, and then obviously then the magazines, if you got it or you didn't, but you got to see bits and pieces, and then if you seen something in the magazine you liked, then you had another talking point. Then walking home, you had something else to talk about as well.
That's it.
I
always remember.
I loved all that.
I always remember, like school summer holidays. So we had 3 months off, right?
Yeah.
And I'd always be like, I'd just wake up and I'd call over to you and I'd be like, fancy walking into town. Just want to see if there's any new magazines.
Yeah.
Because we weren't really clued into it, like we knew what day.
Yeah.
But if you said that things, even though you had money or anything like that, you'd still walk into town because you'd walk into town just to have a gook at the magazines.
Well, but that's it. It was
money or not, it was something to do.
Like Dig said there, during the summer months there, like on days, especially when you're off school, if you weren't walking, especially when you were younger, because obviously sometimes we were too young, we couldn't get a job.
Yeah, but saying, even if you had money, it was something you wanted to do.
But even at that, like you said there, like it was the fact is it gave you something to do, and it was just something so simple, and you just have to crack doing it, like. And I'll be honest, I do miss that,
Yeah, no, it was great. It definitely is.
Yeah.
It's because nowadays everything's on at your fingertips on your phone. The information's there, and when you find out the information, there's nobody next to you to say, "Oh, look what I just found out here about."
Exactly.
Not like how it was when we were kids,
Yeah.
Now we're stuck, working for a living and all that.
Yeah.
Kind of crack.
We were all together.
And that's to say, like, I think because things like that are like, it's definitely a golden period. But even at that, it's a dying kind of thing too, because now, like, we can appreciate it now, but like, I think back then, but that's the thing. Even back then, like, we never took it for granted. Like, that was the funny thing. We actually didn't. Because like I said, it gave us an outlet. It gave us something to do, like, and you weren't bored when you were doing it. You were just, and plus it gave you that. It also gave you a little bit of independence because you were allowed to venture out on your own, and it's not like you were doing anything like crazy or daft or getting into trouble. All you were doing was just heading to town, having the crack, and just going looking at video game magazines and just learning. That's what you were doing. You were educating yourself. You know, that's essentially what it comes down to at the end of the day too. So, and you were enjoying it. And it just comes down to the whole idea of simplicity. It really was simple in what we were doing, and you can't ask for anything more than that. You know.
It was good times, definitely. Good times.
The best.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
So, will we wrap things up?
Yeah, I can do, because was this? Yeah, we've been speaking for a good while. Now, I know that we've done a lot more stories, but we'll probably think of stuff later on. But we can always add them in later episodes, honestly, because we can always share more stories at different stages anyway.
There's plenty more.
There is a lot.
We'll be able to cover everything.
No, we can't cover everything. It's just too much. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Look. Well, I guess that wraps up another episode. Well, I don't know about yous, but I definitely had a blast reminiscing of old times.
Yeah. Enjoyed that.
And to what I hope there's going to be more of them. That's the truth. It definitely was.
We will.
And a laugh too, definitely.
Yeah, no, like video game magazines, just magazines, even in general, they're such a really big part of our gaming past and our childhoods, and it's things that you really miss it, you know.
Yeah. And I did miss it. It brought on the next gen of gaming for us, that kind of way.
Yeah,
it kept you wanting more. And
the like you said, when they started bringing out the demo CDs, like with the PlayStation, obviously because we're of that generation, that was the icing on the cake, as well. You know, like even remember Dig, even later on, like even just before we finish up, remember when you got your first PC in the late 90s, and and even you started buying a few PC gamer magazines where you got access to a couple of demos. I remember there was one demo that you had that had a demo of Resident Evil 3 for the PC on it, you know, and it was that was cool. And you see, that gave you a different way because you were trying to figure out how the PCs walk, how to get the games to walk and stuff like that. So it was really cool as well, you know. Just there was something different about that really stood out. It was so cool. It really was.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
The whole era was just something else, you know.
Yeah.
Just something we miss, and we'll always reminisce about it. You know?
Like I said, for me, it's my favorite period of games. It's and I think it's the best period I think we ever could have had the privilege to be part of.
We all agree.
Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, well, I guess that's really all that's left to say
for now
on that topic. So just all I can say now is just thanks to anyone and everyone who's tuned in, and we hope you enjoyed that little nostalgic trip with us. And if you liked what you heard, you can find us on most podcast platforms. We are also on YouTube, so please consider subscribing and leaving a review or a comment, and share the podcast with your mates. So we're the Casual Gamers Project. Thanks for listening, and until next time.